you're one of the few advisors out there that has a podcast that's followed and listened to and that's on a consistent basis, right? And I think that that is a leader in this space, and I think it's going to be something that others are going to continue to follow. And so I'd love to just learn what led to you starting a podcast. Why did you do it? And then we can talk about kind of how it's worked and what hasn't worked from it.
Well, it was basically a midlife crisis. It was either this or a sports car, right? So I when I had started the podcast a little over 5 years ago, our business, we have a registered investment advisory firm, was at a point where I was, we had hit the curve in, our revenue and profitability was growing faster than overhead. And I was at the time the chief advisor, the chief compliance officer, and had administrative parts of the building. And I was bored. And I was like, I knew I didn't want to be chief compliance officer or have the administrative part. And I had this decision to make. And it was brought to me through some conversation with a friend. Okay, here I am in my mid-40s. I could have a really cool life, make a lot of money, have fun, serve some people, and have a lot of time to go ride my bike and do things. And that, that's attractive.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was, okay, if I wake up at 65 and I look back and say, oh yeah, I had a lot of fun, got to go a lot of places, helped a few people. What could I have done? Right? That was the question that drove a lot of things. What could I have done? And two, obviously not obviously, but for me, doesn't really glorify God that much. Okay, I got mine. Cool, I'm out. So I started the podcast because I think out loud, and I started to really focus in on only working with people over 50. Which, why would you start a podcast if you're talking to people of 50? That's the smallest segment. But for me, I think out loud and I listen to podcasts. I'm like, well, I'm thinking about these issues. Why don't I talk about these issues? Because talking about them clarifies my thinking. I love to teach. So I just started the podcast really with the idea that even if it didn't have any listenership, it would be a good experiment and a win for me because it would force me to be more organized and refine what I'm doing. So that was the start of it.
And how has it evolved? I mean, has it, in your mind, has it been successful on that? How has it helped with the business? And then I'm going to pry a little bit more because I think that there's a lot of people out there listening. I mean, what didn't work from that as you went through this kind of journey over the past 5 years?
What do you want to know first?
Let's start with the good, and then we'll go to kind of the challenges. That's always a better place to go.
So, yeah, from the good, so I've done 270 something episodes and we've never missed a week in 5 years. And the good is, well, I do it my entire life. I'm no longer in the partnership. I'm no longer chief compliance officer. I have a dedicated team and all we do is walk life with clients that are our sweet spot that come from the show. So it's totally transformed my entire life to the better.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm in my sweet spot and hopefully just hitting the sweet spot. And it's allowed me to refine my process and create and trademark agile retirement management, taking the agile project management methodology from software and applying it to financial planning to make it more interactive and collaborative rather than, this big book of financial plan, and more consumable for people to do so they don't get tired head. So that's all the good. It's been amazing.
And so you separated from your old firm and now did you start from scratch when you started this podcast of building up your book of business, or did you already have some book of business beforehand?
I already had some book of business beforehand.
Okay.
I extracted myself from partnership because they were older. They didn't want to invest in this whole journey that I was on.
Right.
And I wanted to clear the decks and have, like we talked about before, Chucky, focus on what I'm supposed to be doing.
That's a huge decision. And that's right. You made that clear decision for fulfillment reasons, which is what drives many individual people.
Yeah, I don't think there was a grand plan. I have no clue what I'm doing. Let's be clear about that. I
think we all can say that. You're fooling yourself if you think you do.
I am very intentional, but it wasn't like, okay, this is my 5-year plan for this. It was more exploring what I'm supposed to be doing for the rest of my life and leaning into what felt like what the answer was.
All right, so tell us, what were some of the challenges with getting the podcast up and running, getting a following, and actually starting to drive business out of it? I mean, 5 years, it's not like you just set a microphone in front of you, you had a switchboard over here, you put the headphones on, you start talking, and boom, it's like you plug in a phone and you have business coming in. So what were some of the challenges that you had starting this podcast?
Well, the challenges were all the technical stuff and just redefining what's possible. Obviously, you have the compliance end of it. So the technical stuff, you had a lot of education to do on how to do it well and how to start that journey. And I leaned on people. So one thing I did start doing was going to conferences outside of our industry, because our industry doesn't understand a lot of what really works, especially from a marketing standpoint. Going to, social media marketing world, podcast movement, FinCon, areas where you if you're a financial professional like me who's institutionalized, sort of have to break that institutionalized mindset. That helped a lot. But the technical stuff was hard. In terms of client acquisition, it was hard because you don't know how to do it, right? Really, would someone want to work with you that would move assets and they've never actually physically met you? That seems weird for a financial advisor standpoint. The good thing for me was I approached it from the mindset that I wasn't hungry, in the sense that I didn't need the new business to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that as an opportunity to build an orchard. That's always the metaphor I use. Meaning, what happens when you build an orchard? You don't put so much pressure. Where's my apple? No, you just plant the trees, you sweat your butt off for years until the trees mature. And I think from a podcasting standpoint, in my humble opinion, is if you're looking at this as a client acquisition strategy, you sort of miss the point already. In that it's about how do you serve and earn the right to have people resonate with you. And over time, if you give them an avenue, they will naturally reach out to you. This is not a seminar where you keep telling people to call you for an appointment. I guess that works. It works for a lot of Saturday morning radio. This is a place where you put your flag in the ground and you state who you are, how you think, and how you approach things. And you focus on who your ideal person is. And they'll eventually find you. And if you give them avenues, a certain percentage will reach out and ask to work with you.